Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The item before you today is a discussion and direction item. I received a request from a board member for a legal opinion regarding whether or not the actions of board member Tipton during the October 19th meeting violated the state conflict of interest policy or the Salinas Valley Solid Waste Authority conflict of interest policy, or violated ethics or other laws on items of this nature. Generally, because conflicts of interest, the penalties and liabilities for such violations lie with the elected official individually and not with the authority as an entity. Usually we don't provide guidance, meaning legal opinions on those issues. In addition, usually, 9 times out of 10, the issue of whether or not there's been a violation of Government Code 1090 or the Fair Political Practices Act, the exclusive jurisdiction belongs to the FPPC. So we typically defer to that agency and either suggest seeking a formal or informal legal opinion. Because of that, and kind of the general costs associated with an item like this, which would typically result in an investigation. I thought it prudent to bring it to the board to receive discussion and direction on what actions the majority of the board would like me to take before incurring those costs and expending authority resources and time. I, in the staff report, included in the background section, a generated transcript of the recorded meeting. The information that's in the staff report is all the conversation that was recorded in that meeting. And then I am asking the board, based on the request that I received, to provide direction make sure I get it correct. To either perform a review or an investigation of the October 19th meeting, which would include interviewing everybody who was in attendance at the meeting to determine what, if anything, they heard or witnessed. The second would be to prepare a summary of the investigation and either send that information to the FPPC for legal opinion, and that would be a formal legal opinion of the FPPC, or in the alternative, refer the matter to the Monterey County District Attorney's Office for review, or to provide me with direction not to take any further action. I would request just so that it's clear what direction is being given, that at the end there be a vote on the item, so that I can count the voting members and ensure that there's a 5-vote majority of the board, so that I know I'm following the direction of the majority of the board. And I'm available for any questions that the board has regarding this item.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And we're going to start off with questions first. We'll go for public comment, then we'll come back for director comments and direction. And so
We lost you, President Rocha. We can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now we can, yeah.
Oh, my apologies. I said thank you for your presentation. We're going to start off with director comments first. I'm sorry. We're going to start off with director questions first, and we're going to go out for public comment, then we're going to come back for director comments and direction as you requested in the instance of having a motion. And so that's how we'll proceed. So director questions first. Director Cullen.
I don't have questions, but I'm going to give my comments, which is I don't think it's in the public's best interest.
Director Cullen, can you please wait until Director Cullen, can you please wait until we have the director comments component of it, please?
Are you being serious?
That's the way the agenda is structured, just so we could have a running on. Thank you, I appreciate you. We're going to move on to director questions. Director Sandoval. All righty. Director Silva,
I was not present at the meeting, so I have no questions.
thank you. And Director Tipton,
No questions at this time.
Director Church,
No questions.
Director Jimenez.
I have a couple of questions. One being that I myself was also absent that day. However, in something of this nature, generally, I think in an informal basis, a request of a statement by those, you know, in attendance would help resolve the issue generally at the lowest level possible, without having to go before having to spend some money for the lawyers and forwarding it to the DA, those types of things. So I'm just wondering if we could do this at a informal level, semi-formal level, to get statements from individuals involved. And if there's any improprieties that actually occurred from the text and from the items that I read, I didn't see that rise to that level. However, that's the discretion of the board. So those are the only questions I have. Were there any statements acquired from the individuals in attendance?
So I didn't reach out to anybody in attendance, and the reason I didn't do that at this time is I didn't want to incur that cost for the board of interviewing people without having direction first from the board that was the direction a majority wanted me to go in. So that's why I brought the item. So I haven't done that at this time.
Okay, through the chairs. So you would have charged us for that if we simply would have provided a statement. That's what I meant.
Well, generally in that case, well, it would usually be an interview, so I'd have to ask you a question. So yes, unfortunately, I would charge you for asking you that question.
So in my line of work, we would have provided a statement. A statement would have been provided from each individual. And without having to do an interviews, generally you're involved in something or something suspected had been involved in something, then we provide a statement without an interview. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Jimenez. Do you have any other questions?
No, none. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And I have no questions on my end either, so we'll take it out for public comment. Seeing none in the council chambers, we'll take it out to Zoom. And I see no hands raised on Zoom, so we're going to bring it back for director comments. And Director Cullen, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I don't see any reason to pursue this further. I think it's a poor use of public funds if we were to pursue this. So those are my comments.
Okay, Director Sandoval.
Yeah, so I'm the one who reached out to Roy, and the reason is not because of what's in the transcript, because you're right, what's in the transcript, it's not really anything but a conversation. I wish I had actually a request from our legal counsel that I review the summary to make sure it was an accurate representation of the concerns, because what transpired after that was what raised the red flags. And it was when I saw Director Tipton approach the CEO of SPN, exchange information, and then a commitment from Director Tipton to send his resume that same night. And that was the concern, right? And so it was according to the conflict of interest codes, if there's even, I'm going to read it just so I don't paraphrase it incorrectly. And this also pertains to board members, is my understanding. It says they should not participate in a meeting in making or in any way attempt to use his or her official position to influence the making of any governmental decision, which he or she knows or has reason to know, or will have a reasonably foreseeable material financial effect, distinguishable from its effect on the public generally. So it means that there's even a possibility in the future. And so that's the way I witnessed it, is he made a positive decision after that small interaction, which I also took as banter or whatever it is. But when you take it to the next step, exchange information and commit to send your resume, then it puts the authority in a compromising position. That's my opinion. And I read the staff report a little bit different. 2 and 3, I thought was like to provide a summary to the FPPC, not the summary of an investigation, because that may alleviate some of the financial burden if he doesn't have to conduct a full investigation. Because My request was only that he contact Director Tipton and the Vespian CEO if that in fact happened. I didn't know about contacting everybody present because that didn't seem like it was necessary. But that was what my recommendation was, to do 2 and 3 and just refer the matter out, and they can decide if it's worth investigating or not conduct a full investigation the way it's presented. I think those costs are, more than they need to be. And like I said, I also understand that there could be some doubt whether this is even an issue worth anyone looking into. But in order to avoid all doubt and to ensure that there has been no impropriety with respect to the action of Director Tipton, the matter should be investigated. This would ensure that the board and Director Tipton have not acted inappropriately or illegally. If the FPPC and district attorney do not want to take up the matter that's referred to them, then so be it. So that's my recommendation, is that we do 2 or 3 without the need for a full-blown contact to people, issue a statement, and then forward the summary.
Thank you, Director Sandoval. We'll move on to Director Silva.
Hard to comment since I wasn't here, but I too am not in favor of using public funds to investigate this matter.
Okay, we'll move on to Director Tipton.
Thank you. I'd like to bring up 2 items. One is I've discussed this with our city attorney, and her opinion is that there is only a conflict of interest if I am offered and accept a position from Vespian Energy. So at this point, there is no conflict of interest in me even reaching out to him. The second thing is I honestly believe that Director Sandoval has an axe to grind, because he's actually currently personally trying to remove me from my seat as a Greenfield City Council member as well. So I believe that there's some additional thing at play there, and I'm not sure exactly what is going on. Thank you.
We'll move on to Director Church.
Yeah, I'm also not in favor of spending taxpayer dollars on this at this point. I think we're airing the issue here, and I will leave my comments to that. I wasn't at this meeting as well.
Okay, we'll move on to Director Jimenez.
Yeah, for myself, listening to everything that has been said is that, and again, reading the transcripts we have available and understanding that there was no offer for any type of, if that was in fact did occur, is still unknown at this point. And did we make a decision and was a vote given and a contract awarded as a result of the possibility of employment? There's a lot of implied there. So therefore, with that said, for me, it would not rise to that level at this point of spending public money on that.
Thank you for your comments. I also would not really be in favor of us spending resources to investigate this matter, us as an agency. I do have concerns with the comments that were made at that meeting, and the appearance of impropriety that could have been reasonably perceived from the comments that were made. I don't think that we are an investigative body of that kind, but I do think that there is a body that exists to serve that purpose. And in my opinion, the FPPC, if they felt the matter would rise to an issue that would be criminal, would make that referral to the district attorney's office. So I would support referring the matter to the FPPC for their ability to look into it and come to their own determination about it. I would not support making a referral to the district attorney's office at this time, considering I think the FPPC is the body that is the investigative body that can make that determination on whether or not it rises to that level. But I would not support us using our own resources to investigate it, but rather to provide what is listed in this staff report to the FPPC for their own viewpoint. The FPPC oftentimes declines to review cases they do not believe rise to a certain level. But I do think that what was said at that meeting is concerning enough to just for the sake of public trust to make that effort to just make sure we're clear and nothing occurred and none of our decisions would have to be nullified or anything like that. So that's my viewpoint. If we're going to refer, I'd say to the FPPC, not to the DA, and to not spend resources investigating it ourselves as an agency. So those are my comments. At this time, board, we are seeking for a motion and action on the issue that is before us.
President Rocha,
Yes, you're recognized.
address something because Director Tipton brought something up. And I just want to ask, I mean, just flat out, so it's your opinion that although you did submit your resume and seek employment, that, I mean, that's correct, right?
No, not.
Okay, so I was under the impression you said when you contacted your city attorney that unless you were actually given a contract, it was not conflict of interest.
What I was told by the city attorney's office is if there was communication, if they did make a job offer, I could accept all of those.
Director Tipton, can you turn on your microphone, please?
Sorry about that. I was told by the city attorney that if there was in fact a job offer created and presented to me, and I did in fact accept that job offer, that would constitute the conflict of interest. If there is no job offer, if I do not accept a job, or if there is a job offer and I do not accept it, there is no conflict of interest.
Okay, and just for the board, would you be willing to verify that you did approach Vespian and exchange information and make the statements that you would be submitting your resume to him that evening?
I did approach him. I asked him for his email. He gave me his email. I submitted an informational email to him asking what kind of positions were going to be open with his company in the future. The response back was there will be no positions open for the foreseeable future. They will be pursuing further employment opportunities with individuals sometime in the next year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. My last question would be, would you be willing to provide that email exchange in an effort to be transparent?
If requested by the attorney, I will provide it. Otherwise, no, I will not, because that's my private email.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
I'd like
I
to
said,
make a
ahead.
motion that with the additional information that we summarized with the interaction, that we just refer the matter to the FPPC for their opinion without any further investigation, so we don't incur any additional costs.
So to clarify your motion, it would not be to send it to the DA, nor would it be to investigate it ourselves, but only to go to the FPPC.
If I could interject really quick, Mr.
Yes.
President.
Yes.
So I guess technically three vehicles are passed forward with FPPC. There's a formal request for a formal opinion, request for an informal opinion, or filing a complaint and then letting the FPPC process that complaint. So just so it's clear, I have the correct direction, I would want to know whether the board wants me to pursue either informal request for formal or informal opinion, or just to submit a complaint to the FPPC asking them to review the October 19th meeting and I guess it would be, or sorry, lack of a better word, exchange between board member Tipton and the CEO from Vespi.
So the point of information, if I could get just what the cost would be of those three.
Just submitting a complaint, I would say it'd probably take less than an hour. So I'd say roughly, I want to see the hourly rate is $237, I think, $34. So a little over $200 for just filing a complaint. Formal complaint, you typically prepare a summary, both for informal and formal, kind of the same thing, but you prepare a summary, like a hypothetical that you're presenting to them for comment on. So that I would say an hour to 2 hours at the most, just to make sure that you have everything captured that you want them to review, and then to submit that. So I would say definitely less than $1,000, probably in the neighborhood of, if I could do the math quickly in my head, that's why I became a lawyer. I'm not good at math. $600 roughly, give or take. We can add for you.
Yeah, my request would be for an opinion. You know, I do just to get clarity on that, not necessarily a complaint. Yeah.
Okay. So, Director Sandoval, also Director Church, did you have any other questions you wanted to make?
I don't have further question at this point.
Okay, thank you. So Director Sandoval, if I understand correctly, have you put forward a motion of any kind?
Just, since the legal counsel, clarified that, it would be just to, submit, a request for a formal opinion with a summary of, the interaction and the summary of the interaction today.
Understood. I think that it is something that should receive a formal opinion just so that we can protect the integrity of the organization, and just so we could all have that clarity on what occurred. I do think that a formal opinion is appropriate. It's not making a complaint, nor is it referring it to an enforcement agency for any kind of corrective action, but rather to receive an opinion on what occurred. So I would second your motion on the basis of it being a request for a formal opinion. Are there any other directors that would like to make a comment at this time?
I'll make a comment then before we vote. Just,
Director
I'll say,
Conlon.
after hearing people who weren't there at the meeting, I feel like I was the only one there, or the three of us were the only one there. Look, based on being at the meeting, hearing what transpired, reading the transcript, and hearing the comments tonight, I still maintain that I don't think it's in our best interest. I don't think it's in the public's best interest. I don't think we should be pursuing this further. I'm satisfied, based on everything I read, heard tonight. I'm satisfied on the answer, and I will be voting no for this motion.
I'd like to
Go ahead, Director
Rose, follow up there. I'm my concern is.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
I said my apologies. I said Director.
Yes, thank you. My thoughts are back together again. Is my concern a little bit with this is whether this could be blown up into something that could get some negative publicity, which we don't really want. So I have a little concern about that. I understand the concern about the issues here being raised, and of conflict of interest as well. So it's kind of a balancing into there. Problem I have is that there's been points made that are outside of the official minutes of observations and all, and I wasn't here. So I don't have the feel of what went on in that room. I don't have that perspective of beyond what I see on the minutes. And I'm going to be inclined, probably, unless I change my mind here in the next couple of minutes, just to abstain on this, because I just don't know if I'm in proper position to cast a vote.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other director would like to make a comment at this time?
Yeah.
All right.
Here, I'll make a comment. For myself, again, the purpose of it to see if there was any impropriety. So therefore, for the protection of Director Tipton, and then also for the accusation or the implication of what occurred by Sandoval, I think would be appropriate to put it to rest by doing, at the very least, an informal, just to wipe it. So that way it's done. And then, understanding the current climate that you're in, both of you are in. And so that way it's resolved, because it can be implied otherwise it's being seen as though it's being swept underneath the rug, because for lack of wanting to spit a couple bucks, and ideally we want to get it done and over with, and no bad publicity or bad publicity for those that are involved as well, that it can be resolved. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Director Jimenez. I absolutely agree with you. I'm not here to make a determination on whether or not someone violated any sort of an ethics code. I don't have that skill set, nor do I have that expertise. And I want to make sure that this matter is put to rest, and that we don't have any sort of ambiguity as to whether or not anything improper occurred. And I think the best way to accomplish that is to getting a formal opinion. That's not a complaint, that's not a referral, but rather an opinion on whether or not something improper occurred. And I absolutely agree with you. It would put the matter to rest and would protect the integrity of the agency as well. And as we are stewards of the taxpayer dollar, I think that that's really important for us to be mindful of, is how people perceive the decisions being made by this board and whether or not they're being conducted in the utmost ethical standards. And so I would support that motion as well. And so I'm going to go one last round if there's anybody else has anything else to say. Seeing none, there is a motion on the floor by Director Sandoval and seconded by myself to seek a formal opinion on this matter by the FPPC. So we'll go ahead and call for a roll call vote.
Mr. President, really quick, just.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't do public comment. Did I do public comment or?
You did.
Okay.
I
Yes.
I just had one more question for my own clarification on should it be approved. Generally, what I would ask would be two questions, because the issue is whether there was a conflicts of interest violation. So one, it would be the two questions that I would envision asking for the FPPC to weigh in on would be, one, the comment that's captured with the exchange that's captured within the transcript in the staff report, and then two, the concern of whether or not receiving employment or from Vespine would have constituted a conflict of interest or not. So it's basically two questions regarding whether or not there was a conflicts of interest violation. If that makes clear.
Would you like for that to be affirmed by Director Sandoval and myself as intents of the motion?
Yes, that I would appreciate that.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
good.
intent of the was the first part of what you said, but also the interaction and summary today, not just the transcript, because there was an interaction here that validated some information, so we can get a full picture. That's the intent of that.
Yeah, and that's why it has to read two questions, one regarding just the what the exchange on the transcript, and then the second part would be whether discussion of or receiving offer of employment constitutes a conflict of interest.
Right, but you keep referring to just the summary of the transcript, but what you would submit would be the summary of the transcript as well as the interaction that occurred here tonight. Is that your understanding?
It would be it's two components, the exchange in the transcript, and then the issue regarding the, I guess, further discussion of whether there was a job opening.
Mm-hmm. So as I understand, the second component of your request for clarification is whether or not further discussion of employment constitutes a conflict of interest. And
sorry, spaced out.
That satisfies your concern regarding Director Tipton.
That happened at this moment.
Sorry, President Rocha, you faded out.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Oh.
Okay. My apologies. No, I was just saying that I thought that the second component of your request for clarification clarified Councilmember Sandoval's original request.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So do you need anything else from us, or should we go ahead and call for a roll call vote now?
I'm good, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll call for a roll call vote.
Director Collin,
No.
Director Sandoval,
Yes.
Director Silva,
No.
Director Tipton,
Abstain.
Alternate Vice President Church,
Abstain.
Vice President Jimenez, and President Rocha.
Yes,
And fair.
the motion fails. So General Counsel Santos, do you need another motion after that, or is no action on the matter sufficient?
No action on the matter would be sufficient unless the board would like to offer any sort of further direction. I'll defer to the board, Mr. President.
I'll open it up to the board, whatever the pleasure of the board may be on the matter.
Through the president, through the chair, I'd like to make a motion for an informal referral, not a formal, but an informal, so to get an opinion on.
Understood. An informal request with the two clarifying points that the general counsel made.
Correct.
Second.
Okay. This is another motion that's been made on the floor, which is now open to debate if any members of the board would like to comment on this item.
So just a little more clarification. Explain the informal once again, please.
So typically with an informal request, and I will give the caveat that they can choose not to respond, but the FPPC has been pretty responsive. It would send an email to the FPPC with a short hypothetical asking them, to weigh in on whether or not those issues constitute a conflict of interest. And they typically will respond back in an email with not a detailed, thorough legal analysis, but like a short, we would have concerns about X or Y. It's not binding. That formal opinion you could really use as protection or a binding to show somebody violated this.
So just a little, when you say hypothetical, you would not be, for example, sending this transcript, you'd be you would be you writing. I'm just trying to understand what hypothetical.
Sorry, when I say I would use the transcript so that we have to use the term hypothetical because it's an informal opinion. So they don't tend to like answering making informal opinions, but they, like I said, they will answer hypotheticals. But I would base my hypothetical off of the transcript and the discussion here tonight.
But that's why I didn't become a attorney.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this is Liz. I do have a question.
Go ahead.
What, in your opinion, would be the purpose of having an informal versus a formal statement back from FPPC? If it's informal, I wouldn't think that there would be anything that would hold any hypothetical situation accountable.
It doesn't carry any legal weight. It just provides information. So typically we've done this in the past on different items. If we kind of want to get guidance in order to ensure something potentially doesn't happen in the future. Or sometimes we do it preemptively, where we'll reach out to the FPPC and say, hey, here's a situation that may arise. What is your guidance? In this situation, it wouldn't have any binding effect. It would just be guidance on what a likely outcome would be should they have received a complaint.
The chair.
Go
Question
ahead.
for Roy here, the attorney. So correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be wrong, so it's been a while. But so therefore, if we refer an informal and they give us an informal opinion that indicated that potentially there was some improprieties that did occur, then it could rise to another level. We could use that basis to move forward with it in the event that that's what occurred. So therefore, we're giving two opportunities here. No, I'm kind of like editorializing as well. Is one, that if it rises to that level, then we move forward for our own protection and for the agency's protection. But secondly, it puts to rest for the individuals that are involved or the individual involved that there's nothing there and it's done and they can't come back and say, hey.
The board could use it as a basis for deciding to file a formal complaint or submit a complaint with FPPC if it came back that somebody had in their opinion had their informal opinion had violated. But aside from that, there is no doesn't carry any legal weight or protection. Sometimes when you get a FPPC opinion, it can actually be a protective measure, because then you can turn back around and say, look, they've already weighed in on this issue. This is not, a violation of 1090. So they do have almost precedent weight going to the future, but that's only if you get a formal opinion. Informal can't. It provides no protection for you. It just kind of gives you general information on what they would do if they received a formal complaint.
So Mr. Chair, I'd like to follow up with one more little question here. I know when there's a formal complaint filed, it's public record. Is it
Correct.
an informal is not public record?
It would still be public record because it would be public. It would be public record likely on the end of the FPPC, meaning if someone submitted a Public Records Act request to the FPPC, it would likely be something that they would release. That for me, it could be, depending on the situation, sometimes there could be attorney-client protections if I'm trying to receive guidance that I'm going to use for legal advice.
I guess my question to there is, I know when this formal complaint is made, it's up on the FPPC's website, and it usually takes them 2 or 3 years to get through and do anything. So the informal, would that be up there on the website like that?
No, because you submit it via email.
Okay,
so
so it would not be as public as I should is
correct. The formal complaint, so again, there's kind of 3 different things we're talking about. So a formal actual complaint that somebody violated, that's what gets posted online. Even if you're doing a formal request for an opinion of the FPPC, doesn't necessarily go online, that open to the public. Like, hey, X agency made this request for an opinion. But if somebody sent a PRA request to the FPPC, that would likely be something that's disclosable, but it's not something that's going to necessarily be attached to their website as they're receiving a request to engage in that analysis.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I'm still kind of on the fence on this because I wasn't there, but I do feel the board needs to move on, and I will try to come to a decision on this, not abstain. I don't like doing that.
Okay.
May I make a comment, please?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I'm tired, or I think we're all tired. So, and to Director Church's comments before, I think doing an informal, I think that there is risks of this, and I don't like to use the word, but I will use the word blowing up. Look, we know what happened. We got the transcript. We know what happened after the meeting. We know that there was an email exchange. There was no job offer. I mean, obviously, I'm not a lawyer and I don't represent the FPPC, but I have an extremely hard time believing that this rose to any level of a conflict of interest. I think the risks associated with asking for an informal opinion it doesn't warrant, that risk doesn't warrant given what happened. I will vote no on this. And I mean, I appreciate on the last motion, Director Tipton abstaining because he probably felt like he had to, but I think he should feel comfortable voting no on this as well. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say I disagree. I think that the issue at hand is whether or not we get an opinion from the FPPC on if something violated a conflict of interest. I think that's always in the interest of the agency to know whether or not something happened that could call into question the integrity of a vote. And since it's an informal opinion that is based on a hypothetical premise, it doesn't put any individual person at risk, but rather allows the agency to have the ability to decide based on that information how to proceed. And so I think that that's doing the responsible thing, it's doing the ethical thing, and it's protecting the agency. And as Director Jimenez said, putting the matter at rest for the involved parties. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and call for the vote on the motion made by Director Jimenez and seconded by Director Sandoval to call for to send a request for an informal opinion.
Director Collin,
No.
Director Sandoval,
Yes.
Director Silva,
No.
Director Tipton,
Abstain.
Alternate Vice President Church,
Aye.
Vice President Jimenez,
Yes.
and President Rocha.
Yes. I don't have the vote tally before me. Do you know if that is a motion that passes or?
4-2.
So the motion passes. Correct, General Counsel Santos? Roy, is that sufficient votes to, I'm not sure if it requires.
Sorry,
more.
my apologies. I forgot to turn my mic on. What I said was that it received a majority vote of the quorum, but not a majority vote of the board. It was a 4-2 with board member Tipton abstaining.
Okay, so does that constitute a motion passing or not?
No, because it's not a majority of the board.
Understood. So we still need to, how do you recommend we proceed with this, Roy?
At this time, I could still receive alternative direction from the board, or we could consider the item closed as no action taken.
Thank you. So board members, now would be an opportunity to make a motion to provide direction to how to proceed on the matter.
Sorry, a quick clarification. I'm glad the vote is corrected because I read through the bylaws on the voting for what passes as a motion or what passes. So maybe I read that wrong and you're the attorney, but I'm just glad that, I mean, I'm not sure you're making the determination that it doesn't pass because it's not a majority of the board. Okay, well, I disagree with that opinion, but the votes are recorded.
Well, if the board would like to proceed with less than a majority of the board, but a majority of the quorum, then I'll take the direction of the board. But this is not it's a discussion and direction item. That's why I asked for a majority of the board. So that I'm making sure that the board as a whole, the majority is directing me to go forward. I'll defer to.
Point clarify, well, what do the bylaws state? That's just, I mean, do we need to pass something, do we need a majority of the board or a quorum?
Yeah, typically for items like this, it's not a motion item, but
We made a motion, so there's,
correct.
if it's not a motion, this is not a motion item?
No, it's a discussion item.
It says provide input and direction, okay?
Yeah.
So so any item that, if I'm understanding, I think the whole board needs to understand this. If I'm understanding this, if there's an item on here that's for recommended action, then we need a majority of the quorum. But if it's not on the agenda, we need a majority of the board.
I'm saying typically for items like this, we like to have especially when it's direction to legal counsel, a majority of the board directing me. That's what I'm saying. It can be.
I'm going to wait in here.
I'll defer to the board. That's just usually.
So I have
Can I wait in here real quick, if I may, please? The item listed is under consideration. It doesn't specify that a motion would not be sufficient based on quorum or board members present. It says consideration item, which I understand to be an action item. Personally, my interpretation of that is that the motion that had the 4 votes is an approved motion, which provides direction on how. That's my interpretation of it, and so that's how I would recommend we proceed on that issue. And Director Church, you had the floor.
No, thank you, Mr. President. I'll take that direction. My apology. Sorry, I misread it. So I thought it was just for discussion. I forgot that it was on for consideration. So my apology.
Okay.
So I'll consider that as directed.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is passed, and that is the will of the board. So we'll move on to